Hello again and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. And if you're not, welcome back. Please remember to leave a like and subscribe if you have not done so already, because it's a free way that you can help me out. Welcome back to part 2 of the coverage of the University of Idaho Murders. Today we will be discussing more about Bryan Kohberger, the suspect, the probable cause affidavit, and the appearances that he's had in court so far. So let's get into it. Bryan Kohberger was born on 21 November 1994, and he has lived in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania throughout most of his life. Shortly after finishing Pleasant Valley High School in 2013, he attended Monroe Career and Technical Institute in Bartonsville, but dropped out. Kohberger later attended Northampton Community College in Bethlehem, where he earned an associate's degree in psychology in 2018. After graduating from Northampton, he worked as a security guard for the Pleasant Valley School District. Around the same time, Kohberger attended DeSales University in Pennsylvania, where he received a Bachelor of Arts in 2020 and a Master of Arts degree in 2022 in criminal justice. He then relocated to Washington to pursue a PhD in the same field at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. And he had completed his first semester at Pullman 9 days before his arrest. He was also a teaching assistant for the university's criminal justice and criminology program. The Pullman campus is about 10 miles or 16 kilometers away from Moscow, Idaho. People that knew him from university also said that Bryan was very intelligent and well-spoken, but seemingly detached. He was described as very leveled and somewhat imposing, and it was also said that he didn't display much emotion. While Bryan was studying at DeSales, he studied under famed forensic psychologist Dr. Catherine Ramsland, who has spent decades researching serial killers. Dr. Ramsland has published over 1,000 articles and authored 69 books, including The Mind of a Murderer and How to Catch a Killer. She also worked with BTK serial killer Dennis Rader to co-write Confessions of a Serial Killer, The Untold Story of Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer. Some of the courses she teaches at the university include forensic psychology, psychological sleuthing, dangerous minds, behavioral criminology, and the psychology of death investigations. Some of the students where he was the TA also came forward saying that Bryan was tough in class and that he always found the most difficult and roundabout way to ask a question. Kohberger is also said to be a devout vegan, and he even told some of his family that they needed to buy new pots and pans because he won't eat any food that has been made in pots and pans that have touched meat. Now, an interesting fact here is that Zana and Maddie both worked at the Mad Greek restaurant, which is a vegan restaurant, which everyone assumed or thought that it might tie back to a motive that he might have met them there. But the people from Mad Creek say that they don't recognize Bryan, and none of them have served him before. After his arrest, a research participation project that he posted on Reddit whilst he was finalizing his master's was also put out, and it read as follows. Research participation needed. Hello, my name is Bryan, and I'm inviting you to participate in a research project that seeks to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. In particular, this study seeks to understand the story behind your most recent criminal offense, with an emphasis on your thoughts and feelings throughout your experience. In the event that your most recent offense was not one that led to a conviction, you may still participate. Additional surveys are included after the open-ended section as to best understand your unique traits. The study should take about 15 to 20 minutes to fully complete. Your identity and all answers provided are completely confidential, and the link to the survey is also an anonymous link. This research has been approved by the DeSales University IRB. Study, he asked things like, how was your life right before the crime occurred? What was your first move made in order to accomplish your goal? Before making your move, how did you approach the target? Why did you choose the victim or target above others? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your home? After arriving, what steps did you take before locating the victim or target? How did you accomplish your goal? Before leaving, is there anything else you did? How did you leave the scene? After committing the crime, what were you thinking and feeling? It seems like a blueprint and step-by-step guide and collecting best practice tools on what to do and what not to do when committing a crime, right? There are many posts and articles of who Bryan is, I say in inverted commas. I think with a case like this, we all want to know what makes a person like this tick. What was he like before all this happened? How was he as a child, etc., etc. I think it's normal for us to want to understand the why per se. But I think that unless you are him, you will never be able to 100% put yourself in that person's mind, if he is in fact found guilty. For now, he's only been charged. He's still, in the eyes of the law, innocent until proven guilty. So all of this is just alleged. There have also been many reports stating that Bryan was even perhaps part of the incel community because of the way he acted towards women, the fact that he never really had a girlfriend, but more about that will probably come out when the trial continues.
That is involuntary celibacy, and that is kind of a subculture within our country of mostly younger men who feel they're not dating the kind of women they would like to date. And while most of them, the vast majority, are not violent, some do have violent ideation, and they do want to carry out threats and actually take actions against people. Is it possible they saw the young women here as Stacy's, that's the nickname for attractive women, or the young man Ethan as a Chad? That's something that I know the profilers and behavioralists are looking into, all the online footprints of those type people.
It was also asked, was he perhaps obsessed with getting away with the crime since he studied criminology and wanted to prove that he's smarter than anyone else? Was he perhaps targeting one of the girls specifically? Maybe it might even be all of the above. We won't know exactly what happened until the full trial starts, and even then, we might not even get all of the answers that we are looking for. On the 2nd of January, it was released that Bryan's father flew from Pennsylvania to Washington to accompany his son on a cross-country road trip weeks after the quadruple homicide. The police had already linked the Elantra back to Bryan by that point, and on his trip back to his family home with his father, he was pulled over twice on one day within 9 minutes. Probably shitting bricks every time he got pulled over. Here's one of the videos of the second time that he was pulled over.
Hello. How you doing? How y'all doing today? Good, good. Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van. Pulled you over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay. Cool. Where are you headed?
Well, we're coming from WSU, and we're scanning.
What's WSU?
University, basically. All the SWAT team and everything.
So we're okay. I'm having a hard time hearing you because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University, and you're going where?
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're slightly much driving for hours.
Hours, days.
Hours to drive. Well,
yeah.
Almost a day.
Okay. And what did you say about some SWAT team thing? Or
Yeah, there was a mass shooting and everything. We don't know if it was about
Where?
This was essentially
Interesting.
well, it's horrifying because he's going to the university, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So y'all work at the university there? Or?
I actually do work there.
Oh.
He was PhD in criminal.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that incident. Just yesterday, or?
This happened this morning. About an hour and a half ago. We're still wrapping it up for investigating. I'm not sure there's two shootings because they did shoot somebody.
Let's see.
And then we don't know about that actually. They were there shooting out of the window or something.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So do me a favor and don't follow too close, okay? All right. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Look at Bryan's face when his father says that they're coming from WSU and that they're heading to Pennsylvania.
Oh.
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're a little... Howlers.
Bryan was also kept under surveillance whilst he was at his family home, with the FBI watching him for 4 days, while investigators from the Moscow police and Idaho State Police worked on getting an arrest warrant. He was seen during this time taking out trash from his house and placing it into neighbors' bins and meticulously cleaning his car, whilst wearing latex gloves. Not suspicious at all, right? It was in these bins where they found the DNA evidence, and when it was tested it contained Bryan's father's DNA. They then cross-reference tested the genealogy, and it matched as the DNA being that of the biological father of the Idaho murderer.
Some of the interesting things that haven't come out in the affidavit, they're staked out in Pennsylvania at Bryan Kohberger's house, at his family's house, in a very rural area. And the surveillance team that's watching from a pretty great distance sees him come out and clean the car from top to bottom, inside and out, using surgical gloves to handle items as if, the car was about to be sold almost. They see him taking out the trash at 4 o'clock in the morning, Bryan Kohberger himself, and then putting it in the neighbor's bin next door. And why is he under surveillance? One, they're waiting to get probable cause to arrest him so he doesn't get away, disappear, or they don't have to find him. But more importantly, they're there to see if they can recover that abandonment sample, something they threw away that would have his DNA on it. And that's why they went to the trash, collected it, and made that match that allowed the judge to okay that warrant.
On 3 January 2023, Bryan agreed to be extradited to Idaho, where he would stand trial for 4 counts of first-degree murder, as well as felony burglary. But even before his journey back to Idaho started, his court-appointed attorney in Pennsylvania was fighting back and released a statement saying, Mr. Kohberger is eager to be exonerated of these charges and looks forward to resolving these matters as promptly as possible. Mr. Kohberger has been accused of very serious crimes, but the American justice system cloaks him in a veil of innocence. He should be presumed innocent until proven otherwise, not tried in the court of public opinion.
Jason Labar says he first met his client at the Monroe County Correctional Facility.
Ordinary, average type guy.
He says the first thing he said to the suspect was, "Don't tell me anything about the case. Don't tell me any facts. That's information for your Idaho attorney."
And then I explained to him, essentially the extradition proceedings. And he was very calm. He was aware of what was going on. He was aware of the murders.
He says his client was intentional about what was said on his behalf in the statement to the public.
The statement that was written by myself in my office, but the exonerated, the eager to be exonerated was his. He specifically said eager to be exonerated rather than he was innocent or something like that.
Until Bryan was in Idaho and made his first court appearance, no details could be released on the evidence that was found against him. After waiving his rights on extradition, Bryan was extradited to Idaho on January 4th, and he was taken to the Latah County Jail, where he was held without bail. This was also the first time that he would know what evidence was found against him. Kohberger made his first appearance in Latah County Court on 5 January 2023 and was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary for breaking into a home with the intent to commit a felony. It was also on that same day where the probable cause affidavit was released that gave us more of an insight into some of the evidence the investigators had against Bryan.
C. Kohberger, cause number CR 29222805. Mr. Kohberger is present in court. He is in custody. He is appearing with his attorney, Ms. Taylor, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings, on behalf of the state. This is the time set in the matter for initial appearance. Mr. Kohberger, I am going to advise you of the rights that you have in this case. I am going to go over the criminal complaint with you, and then we're going to discuss setting the matter for further hearing. You have the following rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have the right to the presumption of innocence. That means the state bears the burden to prove that you are guilty of this offense beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing is a probable cause hearing. At that hearing, the state must establish that more likely than not, these felony offenses were committed and you were the one that committed the felony offenses. You have a right to have that hearing within 14 days if you remain in custody. If you are bound over at that preliminary hearing to district court, if the court finds probable cause, you would be bound over to district court. And at that time, you can enter a plea of not guilty, and you can have a jury trial set within 6 months of your appearance in district court. At both your preliminary hearing and your jury trial, you have the right to confront and question any evidence or witnesses called against you. Call witnesses on your own behalf and compel witnesses to be present and testify at the state's expense. You have the right to be represented by a lawyer. If you cannot afford one, one could be appointed to represent you based upon your financial need. You also have the right to appeal any conviction in your case. Do you understand these rights?
Yes.
I am now going to go over the criminal complaint with you. Count 1 of the criminal complaint charges you with the felony offense of burglary. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, state of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder in violation of Idaho Code 18-1401 and 1403. The maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is not less than 1 year in prison, no more than 10 years in prison, and or a $50,000 fine or both. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 2 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogen, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. The maximum penalty for this offense, if you were to plead guilty or be found guilty, is death or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 3 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Gonsalves, a human being, by stabbing Kaylee Gonsalves, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, 4004. Again, the maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is death and/or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 4 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing Xana Kernodle, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. Again, the maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is up to death and/or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 5 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing Ethan Chapin, from which he died, in violation of Idaho Codes 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. And again, the maximum penalty for this offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is up to death and imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
And Mr. Kohberger, would you like to represent yourself, hire a lawyer, or see if you qualify for court-appointed counsel?
I have court-appointed counsel.
Court has reviewed your application for attorney at public expense. I do find that you are indigent and do qualify for court-appointed counsel. I will appoint Ms. Taylor to represent you in this case. Ms. Taylor, have you had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Kohberger about a speedy preliminary hearing and setting this matter?
Your Honor, I have. We would ask the court to set a status hearing in a week or two to make a final determination.
Okay. And Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings are in agreement with that?
That's fine with the state, Your Honor.
I will go ahead and set this matter for a status hearing then on the calendar on January 12th at 10 o'clock a.m. We will make sure notice is sent, and then Ms. Taylor, do you wish to argue bail at this time?
Your Honor, I would like to ask the court to consider setting a bond. Mr. Kohberger right now is on a no bond hold, but it's a limited request as I don't have enough information. We are new to the case. We haven't reviewed very much in the way of information about the case, and we have just done our own work on the case. But we would want the court to know that Mr. Kohberger has a good family that stands behind him.
And Mr. Thompson.
The state's position is that Mr. Kohberger is not entitled to bond in this case. We can take charges as is noted on the arrest warrant itself. Idaho Code 19-816, 19-2903 both specify that given potential penalties in this case, there's no right to bail. The defendant was arrested 3,000 miles away across the country, where his family is. We ask that he remain in custody. No bail.
At this point in time, pursuant to Idaho Criminal Rule 46B and Idaho Code 19-816 and 2903, I am going to leave the bail set at this case as no bail at this point in time until I have additional and further information at a later date and time. So with that, then, Mr. Kohberger, you will be remanded in custody and remain in custody on the no bail pending further proceedings in this matter. Is there anything further in the case then for today, Mr. Thompson?
Yes, Your Honor. The state is asking for no contact orders for various family members of deceased and also surviving roommates. I've spoken briefly with Ms. Taylor. She indicated there's no objection.
Ms. Taylor, is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Those specific names will certainly be provided to you, Mr. Kohberger, by way of being provided notice of these documents. You'll get a copy of these no contact orders. What you do need to be advised of and what will be in this no contact order is you are prohibited from having any contact with them whatsoever. You cannot contact them through a third person in writing or by any electronic means. You cannot Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, use the phone to communicate with them or otherwise any form of communication in direct or indirectly with them. You cannot engage in any conduct that would harass, stalk, threaten, use, attempt to use, or threaten to use any physical force or violence upon them or place them in reasonable fear of bodily injury. You cannot go within or knowingly remain within 300 feet of their person or their home, workplace, or any other place where they might be. There are no exceptions to these orders. And if you do violate these orders, it is a new misdemeanor offense. It is punishable by up to a year in jail and or a $1,000 fine or both. At this point in time, due to being in the magistrate's division here, at this juncture, I am going to issue the no contact orders for a period of 2 years, and then if it needs to be modified or changed by additional judge, it can be done so at that time. Is there anything further, Mr. Thompson?
No, Your Honor.
Anything further, Ms. Taylor?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned.
The affidavit confirmed that Xana and Ethan were found in Xana's room on the 2nd floor. It also confirmed that Kaylee and Maddie were found in Maddie's room on the 3rd floor, together in Maddie's bed. It was confirmed that Murphy, Kaylee's dog, was found in Kaylee's room. It was also confirmed that a brown tan leather knife sheath was found laying next to Maddie's right side, with the K-Bar, USMC, and the United States Marine Corps logo stamped on it. It was from this sheath that a single source of male DNA was found on the button snap. This was then linked back to Bryan, as discussed previously. Evidence found confirmed that Xana was still awake at 4 a.m. as she received a DoorDash delivery, and at 4:12 her phone showed that she was active on TikTok. So this now confirmed the original timeline of 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. was not correct, as the victims must have been killed after the DoorDash delivery. It was also confirmed in this document that there was a witness statement from roommate DM, who stated that she was sleeping in her room, which we found out was actually on the same floor as Xana and Ethan. She stated that she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. by what sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog upstairs. A short time later, she heard someone, which she thought was Kaylee, saying something to the effect of "there's someone here." Investigators thought that this might also have been Xana, who received the DoorDash and was then on TikTok at 4:12. This also makes more sense to me. Say for instance, Xana received her DoorDash delivery. She was eating in her room, scrolling on TikTok. Then she went to the kitchen, put down the trash, and on her way back, she ran into the suspect coming down from Maddie and Kaylee's room. This picture here shows a Jack-in-the-Box bag with Xana's name in the kitchen. Maybe she saw him, she got frightened, she ran to the room, saying to Ethan, "There's someone here," which the suspect perhaps saw and followed her to her room. This room was on the other side of where the stairs was coming down from the 3rd floor, as well as on the other side of the exit by the kitchen. So there was really no reason for him to go all the way there unless he wanted to hurt them. But of course we won't know more until the trial takes place. DM said that when she heard this, she opened her door and looked out of her bedroom, but that she didn't see anything. Then she closed the door again. And then she heard what she thought was crying coming from Xana's room. So she opened her door for a second time, which is when she heard a male voice saying something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." A security camera at 1112 King Road picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or whimpering, followed by a loud thud and a dog barking numerous times at around 4:17 a.m. This camera is situated less than 50 meters away from Xana's room. After hearing the crying, DM opened her door a third time, which is when she saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. The man, who she did not recognize, was described as about 5'10" or taller, not muscular but athletically built with bushy eyebrows, and she did not recognize this person. The man walked past her and used the sliding glass door exit. It is unknown if the man saw her. She says that she then stood in a frozen shock phase and locked herself in her room. During the processing of the scene, the investigators also found a latent shoe print with a diamond-shaped pattern similar to a Vans-type shoe sole. This was found outside the door of DM's bedroom and confirmed the suspect's travel path. All the evidence found then confirmed that the homicides must have occurred between 4 and 4:20 a.m. Now I feel like I need to say this before we go on with this video. Please let's not shame or blame DM for reacting the way that she did. The affidavit doesn't show everything that law enforcement has in terms of evidence, and it doesn't show the full story of everything that happened that night. It only holds enough information to show why they have arrested Bryan Kohberger. It is so easy to sit behind our keyboards in the safety of our homes, saying what we would do in her situation, but honestly, we really have no idea. We all like to think that we would be heroes that jump into action and save everyone. But in reality, we have zero idea of what our brains will make us do in a situation like that unless we have experienced it before. We also have no idea what happened in those hours that she didn't call 911 because we haven't been made privy to that information. What we can do though, until we get more information on what happened in that house that night, is to remember that these are real human beings and to have a little more empathy and sympathy for her and everyone involved in this case. As part of the investigation, video canvassing was also conducted in the area of the residence to obtain footage from the early morning hours of November 13, 2022, to try and locate any suspects or suspect vehicles. Through this canvassing, a white Hyundai Elantra was identified in the area on the morning of the event, which is how the search for the car started. And through this search, they found the white 2015 Hyundai Elantra that is registered to Bryan Christopher Kohberger. On the videos captured of the car, it did not display a front number plate, which made it more difficult to try and locate. On the 13th of November, the day of the murders, the car was still registered on a Pennsylvania tag that was set to expire on the 30th of November. In Pennsylvania, you don't require a front number plate, only a back plate. On the 18th of November, Kohberger registered his 2015 Elantra with Washington and received his new Washington plates. Suspicious. Camera footage revealed that specific white Hyundai Elantra at WSU traveling north on Southeast Nevada Street at Northeast Stadium Way at 2:44 a.m. At 2:53 a.m., it was observed traveling southeast on Nevada Street in Pullman toward the SR 270 that connects Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. Next, it was seen traveling westbound in the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive in Moscow at 3:26 a.m. and westbound on Steiner Avenue at Idaho State Highway 95 in Moscow at 3:28. Multiple videos showed sightings of the car in the King Road neighborhood starting at 3:29 and ending at 4:20 a.m., where it initially makes 3 passes by the 1122 King Road residence and then leaves via Olenta Drive. It is then seen entering the area for a 4th time at approximately 4:04 a.m. and can be seen driving eastbound on King Road, stopping and turning around in front of 500 King Road number 52, and then driving back westbound on King Road. Then, when it was in front of 1122, it can be seen unsuccessfully trying to park or turn around. Then it continues to the intersection of Queen Road and King Road, where it can be seen completing a 3-point turn and then driving eastbound again down Queen Road. Next, it is seen departing the area of the residence at approximately 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed. Then it is seen traveling down Olenta Drive, where it is thought that he exited the neighborhood at Palouse River Drive and Conestoga Drive. At 5:25 a.m., the car was observed on 5 different cameras in Pullman, Washington, and on WSU campus cameras. Law enforcement then dug deeper. They checked his phone to see if it pinged off any towers near 1122 King Road on the day of the murders. On the 21st of August 2022, Bryan was detained at a traffic stop in Moscow, Idaho, where he gave his contact details, which made it easy for them to try and locate his phone. They obtained search warrants to determine cellular services that utilize cell towers in close proximity to the King Road house on 13 November between 3 and 5 a.m., and it did not show that Bryan's number had utilized any cellular towers near the residence between those times. Surprise, surprise. This meant that he either left his phone at another location or turned it off, which is a common thing that happens in pre-planned crimes, where these criminals think that if their phone does not ping on the tower, it won't link them to the crime. But alas, it is also common in pre-planning for an offender to surveil an area where they intend to commit a crime prior to the date of the crime. So, another warrant was then applied for to check if his phone utilized any of those towers between 12 November at 12 a.m. and 14 November at 12 a.m. It showed that on November 13 at 2:42 a.m., Bryan's phone was utilizing cellular towers providing coverage to where he stayed, and at 2:47 it was utilizing towers providing coverage consistent with him leaving his residence and traveling south through Pullman. This is consistent with the movement of the Elantra caught on cameras. And then afterward it stops reporting to the network completely, which means it was switched off or it was put on airplane mode. It does not report to the network again until 4:48 a.m., where it utilized resources providing coverage to State Highway 95, south of Moscow, near Blaine, Idaho, north of Genesee. Between 4:50 and 5:26, the phone utilizes resources consistent with it traveling south on Idaho State Highway 95 to Genesee, then traveling to Uniontown and then back to Pullman, Washington. At 5:30, it is utilizing resources that provide coverage to Pullman, Washington. A further review showed him leaving his residence at 9 a.m. on the 13th, traveling again to Moscow, Idaho, and specifically utilizing the tower that provided coverage to 1122 King Road between 9:12 a.m. and 9:21 a.m. Next, it is consistent with traveling back to his residence and arriving back there at approximately 9:32 a.m. It has not connected to cell towers again since then. Another search warrant was requested and issued that showed that Bryan's phone utilized the tower that provide coverage to 1122 King Road on at least 12 separate occasions since he opened the account in June of 2022, and that all of these were late evenings or early morning hours apart from one occasion. On the 21st of August, when he was pulled over, his phone utilized cell towers that provide coverage to the King Road residence from approximately 10:34 p.m. to 11:35 p.m. At 11:37, he was stopped at that traffic stop in which he provided his cell phone information. Further analysis showed that his phone utilized resources on the 13th of November consistent with traveling from Pullman, Washington to Lewiston, Idaho via U.S. Highway 195. At approximately 12:36 p.m., he utilized cell towers that provided coverage to Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand, located at 810 Port Drive, Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage from the U.S. Chef store, located at 820 Port Drive, Clarkston, and adjacent to Kate's Cup of Joe, showed his car drive past Kate's Cup of Joe at a time consistent with the cellular data from his phone. At approximately 12:46 p.m., he then utilized a cell tower in the area of Albertson's grocery store at 400 Bridge Street in Clarkston, Washington. There was also footage obtained from that store that showed him exiting his car at 12:49 p.m. The interior surveillance then showed him walking through the store and purchasing unknown items at the checkout and leaving at approximately 1:04 p.m. Between 5:32 p.m. and 5:36 p.m., his phone utilized cell towers that provide coverage to Johnson, Idaho. It then stopped reporting to the network from approximately 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. So as you can see, this travel on that day back from the scene and there are hours afterwards is a very long way around from the Moscow, Idaho area straight to Pullman. Do you think that he possibly disposed of some of the clothing and items, etc.? What is your opinion on that? I mean, Johnson, Idaho is a more than 2-hour drive from Pullman, Washington. That seems a bit far, don't you think? This affidavit also showed that Bryan Kohberger had written an essay where he applied for an internship with the Pullman Police Department in the fall of 2022. He wrote that he had an interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. Posts that Bryan Kohberger have written about his battle with a rare neurological condition known as visual snow has also been released. These posts appeared on an online forum in Tapatalk. This user's account has been matched with Bryan's birth date, and as well as a personal email that he used in the past. He started writing about his struggles with visual snow when he was 17. Now, visual snow is a perception where people see static in their vision. It can be colored static or it can be black and white static. In these posts, he wrote, "I have had visual snow since September 21st of 2009. Since then, I have changed, mainly from the anxiety and sense of derealization and hopelessness. I've become very deep and determined on my goals. It made me smarter. But I've also suffered from depression, no interest in activity, constant thoughts of suicide, crazy thoughts, delusions of grandeur, anxiety, poor self-image, poor social skills, no emotion. When I get home, I am mean to my family. This started when VS did. I felt no emotion, and along with the depersonalization, I can say and do whatever I want with little remorse. I've had this horrible depersonalization go on in my life for almost 2 years. I often find myself making simple human interactions, but it is as if I am playing a role-playing game. As I hug my family, I look into their faces. I see nothing. It is like I'm looking at a video game, but less. I am blank. I have no opinion. I have no emotion. I have nothing." Bryan had his status hearing on the 12th of January 2023.
This is State of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger. Mr. Kohberger is in custody. He is appearing here in court with his attorneys, Ms. Taylor, Mr. Logsdon, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings appearing on behalf of the state. This is the time set in the matter for the preliminary hearing status conference. So I am going to inquire of counsel. Ms. Taylor, what's the status at this time?
Thank you, Your Honor. We are going to ask the court to set preliminary hearing out into June. We would request the 3rd or 4th week of June and probably 4 or 5 days for preliminary hearing. Mr. Kohberger understands his right to a timely preliminary hearing, and he's willing to waive the timeliness to allow us time to obtain discovery in this case and be prepared.
And Mr. Thompson, are you in agreement with that?
The state has no objection to that, Your Honor. Ms. Taylor reached out to us by email yesterday with her proposal. On reflection, the state's calendar would be better in the month of July, but we will make the end of June work if that's the court's preference. And I haven't had a chance to talk to Ms. Taylor about that. I'm sorry, I know that's last minute.
That's okay. The court's calendar is going to be better towards the end of June, early July. So would that work, Ms. Taylor, for your scheduling on your other matters?
Your Honor, yes. If we take that 4th week in June, that's actually best.
Okay. So, Mr. Kohberger, I need to speak to you for a moment then. Sir, you do understand, and Ms. Taylor has represented here, that she's advised you of your right to have, or fully discussed with you the right that you have, which is to have your preliminary hearing within 14 days of the date that you initially appeared before this court. As you recall, when I advised you of your rights, that hearing is a probable cause hearing where the state has to establish that more likely than not, these felony offenses were committed and you were the one that committed the felony offenses. If you waive your right to a speedy preliminary hearing, it does not mean that you're giving up your right to have a preliminary hearing. It simply means that you would not be able to come back and challenge that the state did not present probable cause within 14 days. Do you understand?
Yes.
Have you had enough time to speak with Ms. Taylor about your decision to waive your right to a speedy preliminary hearing?
Yes.
Do you need any additional time to do so?
No.
Then I will ask at this time, as to the 5 counts, felony counts that were charged in the criminal complaint that was filed on December 29th of 2022, are you waiving your right to a speedy preliminary hearing and agreeing that that hearing can be held outside the 14-day period?
Yes.
And Ms. Taylor, do you concur with his waiver?
I do, Your Honor. Thank you.
I will find your waiver of speedy preliminary hearing is knowing, intelligently, voluntarily entered here in open court with the assistance of counsel. We will go ahead and set the matter for preliminary hearing. Beginning Monday, June 26th at 9:00 a.m. And I will go ahead and reserve the week, so June 26th to June 30th, in the event that we need all 5 days for presentation of evidence. And just so counsel knows, it will begin at 9 a.m. each of those days. Is there anything further to address at this time in the case, Mr. Thompson?
Not from the state's perspective, Your Honor, no.
All right. Or Ms. Taylor?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kohberger, then you will be remanded into custody on your same no bail at this point in time, pending further proceedings. Again, we'll send notice out to counsel, and we will be in recess for this morning.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
The judge on the case had recently issued everyone involved with a non-dissemination order, which means they are basically gagged and can't say much that it's going on with the case. The search warrant for what they found in Bryan's apartment was recently released. It was originally sealed, and on the 17th of January, a court order was processed for the items that they found and removed to be released. Among those items were 1 nitrate type black glove, 1 Walmart receipt with 1 Dickies tag, 2 Marshall's receipts, a dust container from Abyssal Power Force vacuum, 8 possible hair strands, 1 Fire TV stick with cord and plug, 1 possible animal hair strand, 1 possible hair, 1 possible hair, 1 possible hair, 1 possible hair strand, 1 computer tower, 1 collection of dark red spot collected without testing, 2 cuttings from uncased pillow of a reddish-brown stain. The largest stain was tested. 2 top and bottom of mattress cover packaged separately, both labeled C. Multiple stains, 1 was tested. People magazine recently released that Bryan had been following all 3 of the girls that he murdered on Instagram.
Idaho college student murders case is getting stricter on who can and cannot speak with the media. The expanded gag order now includes the victims' families and their attorneys. This comes after a newly unsealed search warrant was made public, showing what was taken from Bryan Kohberger's apartment. We're also learning new information between Kohberger and the victims, specifically the girls. According to People magazine, Kohberger visited the restaurant at least twice, where Xana and Maddie both worked. He also followed Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana on Instagram and even tried messaging them. Steve Helling exclusively reported these new details. He's a senior crime writer with People magazine, and he joins us now. Steve, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. Law enforcement tells you they're aware that Kohberger ate at the restaurant where 2 of the victims worked, followed 3 of the female victims on Instagram, even repeatedly messaged one of them and never got a response. So what could the reasoning be, do you think, for investigators withholding that evidence?
Well, right now, I think that investigators are really trying to put together an airtight case. They're trying to figure out something that they can do to make sure that they have a conviction. And so they're not going to tell us everything. You know, obviously, we're hearing bits and pieces, which is what happens in these situations, as you know. But we're never going to know everything that the cops have until the time comes that they're ready to tell us.
Interesting. So the judge overseeing the case, expanding a gag order to cover any attorneys involved, even with the slightest connection. Is there anything specific that you know of that may have prompted that? Was there a concern about information maybe being improperly leaked, or maybe worries of tainting a jury, perhaps?
Well, you know, one of the things that all of us journalists do is we get our sources, and we get them very early on in the process. You know, we start reaching out when something bad happens. And so, you know, a lot of us had sources, including myself, and we ran a lot of stuff that maybe the judge doesn't want to be out there. It kind of shows us that we are headed down the right track, because suddenly we have a much more strict gag order. I don't expect there to be any more leaks after this, because it's pretty clear that nobody's allowed to talk.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be the case. So is there anything that could indicate Kohberger visited this restaurant with the intention of stalking or hurting Xana or Madison? Or do you think this is really about his strict dietary restrictions?
Well, you know, that in that area, there's very few restaurants that serve exclusive or that serve vegan food, that they use, you know, separate ingredients. They use separate part of the kitchen. And the Mad Greek just happened to be one of those places. I don't get the feeling, and I don't believe that the cops get the feeling, that the first times he went there for any other reason but to get a vegan pizza. You know, whether or not his paths crossed with the girls there, and whether or not that's where it started, that's something that the cops would know for sure. But we know for sure that he ate there at least twice, probably more. And, you know, that was a place that was familiar to him.
Interesting. So what other big questions do you still have about the case? What more do you think we'll be learning between now and the next hearing in June?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, we have, what is it, almost 5 months now. And during these next 5 months, I'd like to know, you know, what, other than the cell phone pinging and the DNA, what else did they have that led them to Bryan Kohberger? And more than that, you know, what's the motive? I think that's what everybody wants to know. Who was the intended victim and what was the motive? And both of those things are information that the police have been keeping close to the chest for right now.
Yeah, certainly will be interesting.
It had been stated by a former employee of the Mad Greek, allegedly, that Bryan Kohberger had visited the eatery on at least 2 occasions, but the owner had denied that had happened.
Update to the story that we brought you last night, where People magazine had said that they had found a restaurant employee of the Mad Greek restaurant in Idaho who confirmed that Bryan Kohberger had been in that restaurant a couple of times, ordered a vegan pizza, had some strange requests. And that really gave us the nexus to the victims in the Idaho killings. But the woman who runs and owns the Mad Greek restaurant is pushing back, Jackie Fisher. She is saying the news media should really do their due diligence before running a story with completely fabricated information. This will be my only response to this story from People. It's not true. However, I will say this. People magazine talked to a former employee of the restaurant, and an investigator, a source of theirs, confirmed that it was true. So that's tricky, and we'll have to navigate through all of that.
So this is where we will be ending for part 2. I don't know how many legit facts and information we're going to get since the gag order has been implemented, but I'm sure there'll still be many speculations made and people coming out of the woodwork, but I will definitely be keeping a close eye on this case. If you've gotten this far, thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to leave a like and subscribe if you have not done so already. Until next time, stay safe out there, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Bye!